it. Ah, well, that's life. Being dead was a fact of life. Life hereafter was a fact of being dead. That night, after Skipper's funeral, I was wakened by a cry of despair from behind the curtains. I went to Anna, and I cradled her in my arms. A nightmare was my first thought, or perhaps grief for Skipper. I rocked her gently in my arms and made those kind of noises that made it all right again. I was holding her tightly for comfort, but she fought her way out of my arms and stood on the end of the bed. I was a bit scared and lost at this turn of events, and didn't quite know what to do. I lit the gas. Something seemed to go bad inside me. Anna was standing on the bed, her eyes wild and wide, tears streaming down her cheeks, both hands pressed over her mouth as if to stifle a scream. It seemed as for all the familiar objects in the room suddenly raced away to infinity, and the world had dissolved into formlessness. I tried to say something, but nothing came. It was one of those senseless moments. My mind was racing around in circles, but my body wasn't in gear. I tried to do something, but my body was frozen. What really frightened me was that Anna didn't see me. I wasn't there for her. I couldn't help her. I cried. I don't know if I cried for her or for myself. Whatever the reason, the miseries took over. Suddenly, out of my tear-filled voice, I heard Anna's voice. "Please, please, Mr. God, teach me how to ask real questions. Oh, please, Mr. God, help me to ask proper and real questions." For a moment of eternity, I saw Anna as a flame, and shuddered as I grasped the uniqueness of being me. How I managed that moment I shall never know, for my strength was not equal to that moment. In some strange and mysterious way, I saw for the very first time. Suddenly there was a hand on my face, soft and gentle, a hand wiping away my tears, and a voice saying, "Finn, Finn!" The room began to reassemble itself. Things were once more. "Finn, what are you crying for?" asked Anna. I don't know why. Perhaps it was just plain fear, but I began to swear, coldly and effectively. Every muscle in my body ached and trembled. Anna's lips were on mine, her arms around my neck. "Don't swear, Finn, it's all right, it's okay." I was trying to make some sort of sense out of that awful and beautiful moment, trying to get back to normality again. It was like climbing down an unending ladder. Anna was talking again. "I'm glad you came, Finn," she whispered. "I love you, Finn." I wanted to say, "Me too," but nothing happened. In some curious way, I seemed to be facing two ways at once. I wanted to be back among the familiar objects that I knew so well, and at the same time I wanted to experience that moment again. From the middle of my fog of confusion, I realised that I was being led back to bed, utterly exhausted. I lay there, trying to make some sense of it all, trying to make some starting point from which I could begin to ask questions. But the words didn't seem to fit together in any reasonable pattern. It was a cup of tea in my hand that started the world turning again. "Drink it, Finn, drink it all up." Anna was sitting on the bed, wearing my old blue sweater over her pyjamas. She had made the tea, hot and sweet, one for each of us. I heard the scrape of a match on the matchbox, and Anna's splutter as she lit a fag for me and stuck it in between my lips. I got myself up onto my elbow. "What happened, Finn?" asked Anna. "God knows," I said. "Were you asleep?" been awake for a long time. I thought you were having a nightmare, I muttered. No, she smiled. I was saying my prayers. That why you cried? I don't know, I suppose so. It sort of got kind of empty all of a sudden. It was funny. I thought I was looking at myself for a moment. Painful. She didn't answer for a moment, and then very quietly she said, Yes, I know. I was too tired to prop myself up any longer, and suddenly I found myself with my head resting on Anna's arm. It didn't seem right. It ought to have been the other way round, but it wasn't, and I realised I liked it. It was what I wanted. We stayed like that for a long time, but there were questions that I wanted to ask her. Titch, I said, what were you asking God about real questions for? Oh, it's just sad, that's all. What's sad? People is. I see. What's sad about people? People ought to get more wise when they grow older. Bossy and Patch do, but people don't. Don't you think so? I asked. No. People's boxes get littler and littler. Boxes? I don't understand that. Questions are in boxes, she explained, and the answers they get only fit the size of the box. That's a bit difficult. Go on, then. It's hard to say. It's like the answers are the same sizes as the box. It's like them dimensions. Oh. If you ask a question in 2 dimensions, then the answer is in 2 dimensions too. It's like a box. You can't get out. I think I see what you mean. The questions get to the edge and then stop. It's like a prison. I expect we're all in some sort of prison. She shook her head. No, Mr. God wouldn't do that. I suppose not. Well, what's the answer then? Let Mr. God be. He lets us be. Don't we? No, we put Mr. God into little boxes as well. Well, surely we don't do that. Yes, all the time. Because we don't really love him. We got to let Mr. God be free. That's what love is. Anna searched for Mr. God, and her desire was for a better understanding of him. Anna's search for Mr. God was serious but gay, earnest but light-hearted, reverent but imprudent, and single-minded and single-tracked. That 1 and 2 made 3 was for Anna a sign that God existed. Not that she doubted God's existence for a moment, but it was for some time a sign that he did exist. By the same token, a bus or a flower was also a sign that he existed. How she came by this vision of the pearl of great price, I do not know. Certainly, it was with her before I met her. It was just my luck that I happened to be with her when she was doing her working out. To listen to her was exhilarating, like flying on one's own. To watch her was to be startled into seeing. Evidence for Mr. God? Why, there was nowhere you could look where there wasn't evidence for Mr. God. It was everywhere. Everything was evidence of Mr. God, and it was at this point that the things tended to get out of hand. The evidence could be argued in too many ways. People who accepted one sort of an argument were called by one particular name. Arrange the evidence in a new way, and you were called by a different name. Anna reckoned that the number of possible arrangements for the available evidence might easily run into squillions of names. The problem was further complicated by the fact of synagogues, mosques, temple, churches, and all the other different places of worship, and of course scientific laboratories were not excluded from the list. By any reasonable standards of thinking and behaviour, nobody could, with their hand on their heart, honestly say that these other people were not worshipping the loving God, even if they did call him by some other name like Truth. She could not and would not say that Ali's God was a lesser kind of God than Mr. God that she knew so well. Nor was she able to say that her Mr. God was greater or more important than Kathy's God. It didn't make sense to talk about different gods. That kind of talk inevitably leads to madness. No, for Anna, it was all or nothing. There could be only one Mr. God. This being so, then the different places of worship, the different kinds of names given to those worshippers, the different kinds of rituals performed by these worshippers could be due to one thing, and one thing only: the different arrangements of the evidence of Mr. God. Anna solved this problem to her own satisfaction, or better still, she resolved it on the piano. I've played the piano for as long as I can remember, but I can't read a note of music. I can listen to music and make a reasonable copy of it by my ear, but if an attempt to play the same piece of music by reading the score, I turn it into a dirge. Those little black dots throw me into a flat spin. Whatever I managed on the piano stems from popular sheets of music from the pre-war, the little frets with their constellations of dots which show you how to finger the ukulele, or was it the guitar, I can't remember, and those cryptic symbols underneath the lines of music such as the chord of A minor seventh. It was the kind of music that I'd learnt. Limited perhaps, but it did have one great advantage. Given a suitable handful of notes, you could call it this chord or that chord, or perhaps any one of half a dozen names. It all depended on something else. This, then, was the method I used to teach Anna something about the piano. Soon she was romping through major chords relative to minor chords, minor sevenths, diminished sevenths, and inversions. She knew their names and how to call them. More than that, she knew that the name given to a sprinkling of notes depended on where you were and what you were doing. Of course, the questions of why a group of notes was called a chord had to be gone into. My Weekly's dictionary was called into service. We were informed that chord and accord were more or less one in the same word. One more flip through the dictionary to find out the word accord was used, and we ended up with the word consent, and there we stopped. It wasn't many hours later that day when I was confronted with an open-eyed, open-mouthed look of astonishment on Anna's face. She'd suddenly stopped playing hopscotch with the rest of the kids and walked slowly towards me. "Finn?" Her voice was a squeak of amazement. "Finn, we were all playing the same chord." "I'm not surprised," I said. "What were we talking about?" "Finn, it's all them different names for churches." "So what's that got to do with chords?" I asked. "We're all playing the same chord to Mr. God, but with different names." It was this kind of thing that was so exciting about talking to Anna. She had this capacity for taking a statement of fact in one subject, teasing it until she'd discovered its pattern, and then looking around for a similar pattern in another subject. Anna had a high regard for facts, but the importance of a fact did not lie in its uniqueness, but in its ability to do service in diverse subjects. Had Anna ever been given a convincing argument in favour of atheism, she'd have teased it about until she'd got a firm hold of the pattern, viewed it from all sides, and then shown you that the whole argument was necessary ingredient in the existence of God. The chord of atheism might have been a discord, but then discords were in Anna's estimation thrilly, but definitely thrilly,